Yeah.
Hey, we're the Big Auto Grade, and here's Jude Paris with his third place deck profile from the Houston Autumn Circuit 2017.
Alright, so I played Legend World Toilets. I felt like it was a strong pick going into this format, especially since the new set had just dropped and a lot of people are unsure what to play. But I'll just jump straight into it. Starting off with our size 3s, we played a total of 8 copies of them. 3 Oberon, 3 Hanako, 1 Curie, and 1 Fairy Dragon. Oberon is basically a skill drain on legs for 2 gauge if I have 7 or more fairies and drop. Also has double attack, and since Toilet is mostly fairies, the skill comes online a lot. It's your second win con in the deck. You don't want to really rely on it, but it's there to like finish out games and make sure like your opponent can't play. Hanako is the boss monster of the deck. It is no call cost, but it can only be called through the effect of a Toilet. When it enters the field, you blow up all cards on your opponent's side of the field, and you gain a life for each card destroyed, and it also has triple attack with 2 crit. So it's a real threat. It's the MVP of the deck. Like, this is the card you probably want to get out the most, and you can, through the effect of Toilet, Toilet calls it at counter speed, so you can even do it during your opponent's turn. It's the blowout card, it wins, it's your JD, so it's just really good. Next we have Ice Dragon, Demon Lord, and Mysteria. So Mysteria is double attacking size 3 with Soul Guard and Lifelink 2. And it says abilities that I control cannot be nullified. So if I'm going up against, for example, Star Dragon World with her Dragon Force, my abilities can't be nullified. So I'll still have my double attack, and I'll still have all my other guys, I'll have my Soul Guard. And when it's called through the effect of Swordsman Kiri down here, then all my opponent's effects are nullified. So it's really good to try and combo off and use Kiri to flash it in during your opponent's turn so they don't have any effects. But most of the time, it's just used as a double attacker. I might bump it to 2, but this card kind of screwed me once. In my round 5 or 6, I played against Energia, and although it won me the game, it also lost me game 1 because of the lifelink. So be careful with it. Another card that you got to be careful with the lifelink is the last size 3. Fairy Dragon Emperor. When he enters the field, if you have 8 or more Dragon Lords or Fairies in your drop, you burn your opponent for 3. So, super late game, if you haven't done any Menjo plays, this card kind of becomes ridiculous, because you'll Menjo, search it out, burn them, call over it, put it back, Menjo again, search it out, and then burn them. It's a free 6 damage, and if you actually use it to attack, since it does has double, it's 7 damage spread across 3 different packets. One of them they can't stop unless they have any reduced damage skills. Moving on to size 2s, we have 4 copies of Paper Eton Nomen. This card really should have been Buddy for the deck, but I chose to Buddy Skull Dandy instead, which was a mistake. But Paper Eton Moment is your Stratos. Pay 1 gauge, search your deck for any Toilet card. So it can search itself, it can search the Skull Dandy, it can search your Toilet, it can search your Shield, it can search Hanako, it can search Menjo. It basically searches all the power cards in your deck and gets you where you need to be. Most of the games that I played, if I didn't open up Toilet or Moment, I felt like I was going to lose, but if I did open up one of the 2, then I was good to go. Next off, rounding off the size 2s, we have 2 copies of Hazel Emperor Jailer Alking. Really simple card, 4-2-5. Mill the top 3 cards in my deck to pop one of my opponent's items or spells on the field. So you can just use the skill, pay cost, mill your 3, and then like whip on it. It's fine. You're just using there to mainly accelerate, but it's also good because removing items and removing spells is really key. We only play 1 size 1 in this deck, and that is Carnival, Stallion, and Dream Galahast. When it enters, you mill the top 3 cards in your deck. That's it. Nothing really special. More mill, starting off with our size 0s. 4 copies of Skeletal Specimen Skull Dandy. So when Skull Dandy enters, you mill the top 3 cards of your deck, and if you mill a Fairy attribute card, you get to draw a card. I have had this card with a couple times, I think 5 times total now, throughout the current time that I've played this deck. So not only at the BCS, but like I've been playing this deck since release, and it's with a total of like 4 to 5 times now. Really good. Probably I ran it as Buddy. Probably won't do that again, just because sometimes this was in hindsight. I felt like I needed to side out a copy. Like on the drive home, I'm thinking like, I probably could have sided out 1 Skull Dandy, but it was Buddy, so not worth. Then we have 4 copies of Professor Menjo. Now this card is probably your second, third win condition in this deck. because it puts cards back. So for 1 gauge, you get 100, 1 critical, 100. Not really good at beating over stuff, but its actability, which is not a name skill and not once per turn, but once per turn per copy, is you put cards back. If you put 4 different names back, you get to charge 2. If you put 8 different names back, you charge 2, you draw 1. If you put 12 different names back, you charge 2, draw 1, search your deck for any card. So we don't necessarily have a draw spell in this deck, but this card functions as your draw spell, and this allows you to toolbox like anything in your deck. And as you can see, we have a lot of 2-ofs, we have a few 1-ofs. Being able to just search anything you want is really powerful. It just gives you like all these different plays, so like it just helps you play around everything. Next we have 2 copies of Loki the Air Guys. Just soul drop on anything, so you can soul drop Toilet, you can soul drop your opponent's monsters. Really simple, just helps you accelerate your Toilet plays. And then 2 copies of Mass Swordsman Kiri. I was playing 3 copies of Loki, but the night before I said I wanted to try out Kiri since I did see a couple of JP lists running it. Kiri does the same thing as Loki essentially, except it removes 1 soul and you gain a life, and it also has that counter skill to call Mysteria. So being able to flash into Mysteria, like I said earlier, is nice, but removing 1 soul for 1 life is really, really good. Also, this card's misprinted. I don't know when they're going to errata it properly. Currently it says that you can remove a soul card from a card you control, but the proper text says any card on the field, so yeah. Well, not last, but the last 2 of we have is Demon Lord Pet Cat Cassie. So if you have 7 or more fairies or demon lords in your drop, the monster in your center gains +2 crit. This rarely came up. Like, it's really, really win more, but when you do get it off, you kind of just outright win, because having a 4 crit Hanako, a 4 crit Oberon, 4 crit any of your side 3s, hell, even slapping this in the center itself, giving itself the skill, and swinging for 3 crit with it is deadly. Also on destruction, you know the top 2 cards of your deck. So, it's pretty good. I might cut it down to 1. The only reason I can justify even running it at 2 still is because of the mill skill, but the extra critical is super win more and probably not worth it. Then we have 1 copy of Wind Fairy Silk. This card's a meme. I ran it because it's pretty, and I had it in my binder, and I just said fuck it. In all honesty, like, you shouldn't run this card, but it did come in handy a couple of times when I didn't start off with Toilet or Paper Eton, but I did start off with this, and I managed to mill a Toilet through one of my many mill cards, or pay off a gauge with a Toilet in it, and then just salvage it back to, like, it gets you going, but it's subpar. It's just another one of names to help you accelerate your Menjo plays faster. Moving on to items, the only item we play is the Toilet. 4K power, 2 critical, 2 gauge to equip, and you put the top 3 cards of your deck into its soul. Every time that you, the player, are being attacked, you remove a card from its soul. When you have no cards in the soul, you can pop it off at counter speed to call a Toilet monster from your hand or your drop zone. So you usually use this to shit out the Hanako real fast. A lot of times people will try and leave you with 1 or 2 souls, especially if they see the Hanako and drop. So later in the day, when I started playing against smarter people who knew what to do, I would hold the Hanako in hand, just so they're like, oh, okay, it's safe to go in against the Toilet. I'll just swing a bunch of times, and then you flash in the Hanako. I remember in my top 4 match against my friend Chris, he did not know that you could call the cards from your hand, and he saw no Hanako and drop, so he went in for a big play, and he got punished for it, because I just flashed in Hanako. Now moving on to spells, we run 10 different shields, 4 of the Toilet shield, the third door, bathroom, yada yada. Pay 1 gauge, nullify an attack, and if you have a Toilet on your field, you can remove a soul card from a card on the field. So you can remove a soul from your Toilet, or you can also remove souls from your opponent's cards. So say for example they got a base form jackknife or a base form drum, and they swing in with that, and you shield, and you have a paper econ moment on the field. You can remove the soul from that. You can remove the soul from anything. You don't have to remove the soul also, but it's there. Then we have 2 Holy Grail, 2 Scorner Gremlin. These are just additional shields. They're just names again to help Ninja. I was gonna make these 1-ups, but I felt like I needed more shields, especially since we're in a meta that's full of decks that just I'm gonna try and put out 5-6 attacks, And speaking of 5/6 attacks, we're not having any of that shit. So we're playing Great Spell Wirestat. This is a really, really old card. So what it does is you pay 2 gauge and 2 life at the end of your opponent's first battle, and you end their battle phase. So it's a battle fader, which is really good because against your bats matchup, they need 3 attacks to do pretty much anything. They need 3 attacks to impact. They need 3 attacks for X-Lings. They need 3 attacks for all this shit. So being able to just say no and just force them into the final phase is really nice. It's good against Chaos because they have that one Dragon Emperor that just swings a bunch of times. It's good against the Mirror. It's good against pretty much every deck right now because not only are you fishing 2 cards out of your gauge to help steal the Menjo, but you're just you're mitigating all that damage that you would take. So like those 10 attacks that you probably had to shield, you eat the first one and you eat another 2 life just to end the battle phase, and that's really good. Then we play 4 copies of Ossuary Guard, 2 actual Ossuary Guard and 2 Buddyfight Triple T promo Kirishioru. So this is, again, we do the 2 and 2 because they count as 2 separate cards. So again, it helps with Menjo. I treat this as a draw spell kind of. It's good against bats again because if they have the bats that keeps restanding when it kills a monster, you sack off the monster that they're swinging at, so that way it'll whip. And if they have the X-Link, they have the X-Link, but I mean not X-Link, X again, they have it, but most of the time they won't. And this is just really nice because it gives you those resources back, and a lot of the monsters in this deck you have to treat as spells, so you're not really negging off of it. Then we have 2 copies of Darkness Rune. Probably the best utility spell in Legend World. So for 1 life, at counter speed, you can either gain 2 gauge, pop a size 1 or less monster on the field, on your opponent's side of the field, or remove a soul card from your opponent's side of the field. So a really good utility all around. Most of the time I use it for the gauge. In some instances, I would use it to help defend Oberon as a shield, because Oberon's got that beefy 7k defense. So they'll have to link attack to hit over it, and you just pop one of the size 1s in the links and their turn ends there. Moving Soul is nice. Against Death Count, it really helps a lot. I dodged that matchup all day though, unfortunately. So, and then the last card we have is Hardworking Fairies, rounding up the deck at 51. Just another gauge spell, one of, again, to help get the Menjo off more consistently. So yeah, moving on to sideboard. The sideboard didn't really come up a lot. A lot of people in this game don't know how to side. Like, they'll just, like, this is kind of redundant because a lot of people use the sideboard to like, oh, I just want to complete my playsets. But in the case of my deck, completing playsets it's anti-meta. So you're just siding it. You're already main decking the hate. You're just siding in more additional hate that you're already main decking just to help make up for your matchups that might be subpar. So first off, we have 2 Barbed Wire. I did not use it all day. No Hero World whatsoever, and even if I face Hero World, I don't think I would need it. 2 more Lokis against Star Dragon World, any deck that builds up Soul, Death Count, Energia, that type of stuff. 1 more copy of Gel King for decks that rely heavily on their weapon, like Bats. And the Mirror Match, when they have the Mirror Match, you use this, it forces the Hamako. This is really good against Executioners too, because it gets rid of their gate and it gets rid of their weapon. Negro Bars, I sided it in for basically Chaos and any other size 3 matchups. I remember in my top 8 match against Chaos, I used this for game, and I killed his Beer God with it, and he took 30 damage, and it was fucking hilarious. He's the meme now. And 1 more Scorner Gremlin, just an additional shield against those rush down matchups. 1 more Darkness Rune, because, again, good utility. 1 more copy of Great Spell, because, again, Bats and more rush down. You just want to side in the 3rd copy so you can see it more often. And rounding up the last spell, we have the 1 copy of Breathing Guard. I sided it a lot, but it wasn't really viable, because most of the time when I had the gauge and the resources to Breathing Guard, I was already in a winning position. It just like, it was win more. But it's still nice to have, because when your opponent's top decking, which they might often find themselves in that situation because you force them into that situation with all the board wipes and control that you have, being able to just go Breathing Guard even though you have no gauge left, and they might still be able to link attack, kill your Oberon, it's fine, because that was their only play. Now they're left with no hand, no resources left, no gauge, the draw spell they just cast with, and you just outright win from there. But would I side it again? Probably not, but I think like I could probably side in the other Negro bars that came out, or I could probably or alternatively, I can cut the barbed wires entirely and bump the breathing guard at 2. It's a weird card. It's in a weird position. You don't really have to worry about sideboard with this deck, honestly, because you already have so much hate in the main deck. But yeah, that's the deck. Moving on to my rounds. Round 1, I got the black card, so didn't have to play anyone. Round 2, I played against a good friend of mine, Edgar. He was playing Jackknife. I 2-0'd him real quick. It was a difficult matchup, but it was a matchup in my favor. He never really got to establish a board, and when he did, he made a Soul Aster, and I just tore it down with Hanako. And he made a Soul Aster again in game 2 with this time with Dragon Force, and I just tore it down with Mysteria. So a really easy matchup, especially if they don't get going, then they just lose all momentum. Round 3, I played against Chaos. I beat him game 1, game 2, he cheesed me with the impact, and then game 3, I just managed to overpower him, just out-resourcing him. Him starting with 4 cards in hand didn't help. Round 4 and 5, unfortunately, I do not have recorded, but I do remember, I believe round 4 I played against Bats, and I lost that one 2-1. And then round 5, I honestly don't remember, and I lost my score pad, so I don't have it recorded, but irrelevant. Round 6, I played against Thunder Knights. That was pretty fun. It was actually the Energia Turbo build, so it was really, really hard for me to deal with. They got game 1 off of me because that was the awkward thing I was talking about at the beginning of the deck profile with Mysteria. I was caught in this loop where if I call out the Hanako, I took the lifelink too. There was no way for me to dodge the impact, basically, and gain enough life to get out of it. And then game 2 and 3, I just came back and reverse sweeped them because Loki's a fair card, and I just soul drop Hanako to get rid of that monster. Round 7, probably the most interesting round of the day. It was the mirror match. The only other toilet player in the room. Unfortunately for him, he does not have Darkness Rune main deck. I don't think he had him in his side at all either, and he doesn't own Fairy King Oberon. He actually had to pick it up and read it when we were playing, which was... The minute he did that, I felt like in my mind that the match was over, because I just sat on Oberon, and it made him... Like, sitting on Oberon in the mirror match forced him to use the Hanako when he didn't want to, and the worst part is, like, he would use the Hanako, not get any pop off of it, and then swing, and then I chilled it, and then it just... Everything crumbled for him when I just put the Oberon out. And him not having Darkness Rune gave him no way to play around my Menjo or interact with me, while me having Darkness Rune gave me the ability to get rid of his Menjos and stuff. So it was nice. I finished third in Swiss, and moving into top 8. First round of top 8, I played against the same Gear God player I played earlier in rounds. I 2-0'd them this time. This is where I Negro Bars them. Then in top 4, I played against a friend of mine, Jarrett. Again, another Gear God matchup. Unfortunately, I lost this one. I just didn't see enough resources, realistically. I think in one of my games, I did not see Toilet. In game 1, I did not see Toilet in turn 2, and then in game 2, I did not see Toilet again until turn 2. So it was really bad on my side.
You'd say the Chaos matchup is pretty even this time?
The Chaos matchup is I'd say it's in your favor, because you actually just out-resource them. But if they, the problem with Chaos is if they have the Daryl Barrick and they just go off on the 1-for-1 train, because all their monsters are basically, you can either look at it as I wouldn't call it a +1 because, it's a wash because you play it down and you get a draw off of it, or you get a draw and engage. So it's a break even off of each time they play something, so they're not really losing resources and they just build a board for free. So you can see that you can call it a wash, you can call it +1, but they don't lose resources off their monsters, which was really annoying and kind of hard to deal with. But Hanako punishes them for that because obviously I can't destroy the Gear God, but I can destroy the other monsters and gain life off of it, and then those 1-for-1s kind of slow down. But it's kind of hard to Hanako them when you can't get set up in the first place. So yeah. Then in the final fight for me, the pettiest fight of them all, I fought against Chris for the worthless 3rd place trophy, and it was I felt like it was a matchup in my favor. We played it the night before.
He played Demon Lords.
Yeah, he was playing Demon Lords. I got game 1. game 2, I misplayed and I kind of like blew it. Because I was holding a toilet shield and I had an overrun with 5 and drop. I knew where the fairy and the gauge was. All I had to do was shield and the overrun would have been back online. But whatever, because in game 3 I got it because I held the Hanako in hand. He went in and I Hanako'd him and he was punished and then he was top decking and it was great. Overall, it was a good tournament run for me. Toilets performed really well, a lot better than I expected. A word to the wise about this deck. You can go ahead and pick it up. You can do it if you want. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that this deck is good. I'm not saying it's the best deck in the format. I don't want to really toot my own horn here, but I work really hard on Legend World as a whole, not just Toilet, but all Legend World decks. So you can pick it up and play it, but I feel like there are a lot of small intricacies that you need to learn before just saying, oh, I'm gonna pick this deck up and just go to a tournament with it versus bats. No disrespect to bats, obviously, because high tier bats, high level bats players know what they're doing and stuff, but you can give a scrub a bats deck and let them go to an event, and they might not top 8, but they'll do well. You can give a scrub a toilet deck. And
they can scrub out.
Yeah, and they'll scrub out immediately. Also, if you're going into a high tier tournament setting, you need these overruns. They're impossible to get, which is another reason why it's kind of hard to build this deck. Because finding this card's 2 years old, and it's at this point now where a lot of these 2-year-old cards, the Holy Grails, the Overruns, the Gremlins, the fairies.
It's straight out surprising that we have not seen a reprint.
Yeah, the majority of this deck, that all the older stuff like this is really difficult to find. So yeah, but if you do manage to get everything, just practice, no days off. Theory crafting every day if you're not playing, and even if you're not playing Buddyfight, go out and play a different card game, read a fucking book or something. I don't know, just expand your mind. Stay woke. Yeah, that's everything.
Thank you so much.